this is Chipacon. I am not in my usual room. I'm on a borrowed computer because I think I'm going to have to buy a new one. Sorry, you didn't need to know that. This is the Changing Times, Changing Worlds Otherworldly show, where we are going to, you have been signed out? I don't understand.
You're still here.
I'm
You're
still
still
here.
here.
I look like I'm
Oh.
still here.
Your other one has been signed out.
Okay, cool. So
That's true.
anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about money, and I'm going to start with, because it's my show, with my perspective. Back in 1951, which was even before I was born, so it was a while ago, they repealed the Witchcraft Act, which had been going continuously in England from, in theory, the late 1600s. Of course, Henry had anti-witchcraft acts. Elizabeth had anti-witchcraft acts. James had anti-witchcraft acts. There have been anti-witchcraft acts. Like the latest incarnation of this is the Fraudulent Mediums Act. And that was what we were doing. And when that was finally repealed, then Gerald Gardner in 52 put out Mastering Witchcraft and started Wicca officially. And this is probably why in the early years of Wicca, there was such a strong emphasis on thou shalt not charge money, because in the early years, the Wicca was having to deal with that. Even today, the statute is, in theory, supposed to expire this year. In Pennsylvania, any type of fortune telling is illegal, which I'm sure the Soothsayers Guild would have liked to have known when we were doing soothing at Magick. But the last time they prosecuted anyone for it was in 35. So apparently they only go after you if somebody is using that, knows about it, and wants to go after you. So that is I think any law is only as strong as the will of people who enforce it to enforce it. But I think that has a lot to do with why many of us were taught as we were coming into the pagan community that you are not supposed to charge money for what is a spiritual gift. That's my perspective, and other people can throw theirs out. That you, Matthew?
Yes, hello.
Hi, I'm glad you were able to make it. Did you have something you wanted to throw in on that subject?
Well, let me start by saying it looks like everybody knows each other. Let me just do a quick intro. My name's Matt Thomas. I've been a public professional seer at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair for 27 years now.
Okay.
And
haven't been prosecuted yet.
No, not yet. And the reason why I think is that I get around that Pennsylvania statute is with ULC ordination. I'm an ordained minister, so then it falls into the category of spiritual counseling. And then anything that's transferred monetarily is due to a donation. At the Renaissance Fair, it's a entertainment venue, so technically we're an extra entertainment people are paying for. But in short, at our booth, it isn't they're paying for palms or runes or cards or oracles or whatever. In particular, it's our time that we're spending with them that they're paying for. But of course, each thing on our menus has a different difficulty level and how long it takes to do it. So then there's a variance in our charges, in our fees, I mean. But yeah, I mentioned to earlier, in case I wasn't here, that it seems the PA state statute making it illegal is due to run out, or at least provisions of it are due to run out this December of this year. that were put into place, I think by, there's a attached video that I think we'll share later. I think it was enacted by William Penn back in the late 1800s, and it's been on the books ever since. But as how do you say it? Chickapan?
Chipacon.
Chip-ah-con.
Chipacon. All right, sorry. As Chipacon said, the law is only as stern as the will to enforce it. It would seem that it was only really ever drawn out or dragged out of the books periodically in the bigger cities like New York City, Philadelphia, whenever the shops, that pop up, I guess become overly prevalent, or anybody complains about it, and then they just pull that out of the mothballs and start shutting people down, and then they forget about it again.
Yeah. Interesting. My perspective on money was shaped very much by, I can't say it came in the middle of then and now, but a little closer to now. But Linda Goodman, Jen and I both took attunements, and she was our Reiki master. And she was one of what they called the rogue masters, who rebelled against the rule that you had to charge $10,000 to attune up to the master level. And that had been put in place after Dr. Usui saw people accept his gifts, get healed, and then just go right back to what they were doing. And he decided that there had to be some kind of price. My attitude is that I think it's perfectly reasonable to charge for a service, because frankly, if I'm a kitchen witch and a techno mage, it would not, under those rules, it would not be proper for me to charge for cooking or fixing your computer, which I don't buy. On the other hand, ability to pay and need of the individual are the two factors I count. And if I encounter somebody who's flat broke but badly needs the help, they'll get the help. On the other hand, if I get some, one of these modern woke types, and you can tell they've got more money than common sense, then I charge for that. I would charge for that. And I
You don't
wish I
take
had
advantage, but you charge.
No, yeah, exactly. And so it varies. I just can't say how much I would charge or anything, but money is just a medium of exchange. It's a way of moving value around. And one of the most interesting things happened back in the late 70s. I had a reading done by this fellow who, when it came time to discuss payment, he took a small wooden box, held it in my direction, opened the lid, and then turned his head away. I put $5 in the box. He closed the lid, didn't even look at it, just put it in his bag and left. So, and that reminded me almost of a curious Orthodox Jewish tradition of giving and receiving, where the giver and the receiver never get to know who each other was. And that was the receiver, the person who was hoping for a donation, would walk around the temple wearing a cloak with a hood. And if anybody wanted to donate, they would come up behind that person and drop the money in the hood. So you could carry it at a lot of different levels. But I don't see, well, it's easy to say that money is essential when you're trying to pay the rent, but you have to move away from that when you realize it's like if I were a doctor, separating the business of medicine from the service of medicine. And I see the difference between, holding that line. So you can then make your own judgments and take it from there. And I just see money as part of the toolkit.
I certainly think no one asks doctors to heal without being paid. No one
Right.
asks mechanics or electricians or cooks.
Exactly.
They do ask mothers to do a whole lot of housework without getting paid.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of status is determined by how much you're getting paid.
Hmm.
I think
Mhm.
that is a cultural thing that it's very hard for modern, whether they're neo-pagan or spiritualist or whatever, to get away from.
Hmm.
We are, like they said in the commercial, you're soaking in it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's hard to get away from something that we don't even question. But again, in the in the whole idea with can witches take money for casting a spell or for or for doing a reading, a lot of that goes back to trying to make Wicca acceptable and
Mhm.
bless them, thank them for the foundation they laid down for the rest of the neo-pagan movement to be able to move forward. From there, I think we have to say, traditionally, what was a witch? And a witch was a professional magician. They got paid. A
Mm.
lot of what we know about witchcraft in the Middle Ages, at least in England, comes from the records of the assizes, the law records of who was suing who. And it's like, I had a ham stolen and I gave the witch 2 pence to get my ham returned, and it wasn't returned, so I want my 2 pence back. Or I did a divination. I discovered so-and-so's stolen cloak. He got his cloak back, and he never paid me the shilling he was supposed to pay me. This is what getting money for a service rendered is what made people witches in the history of witchcraft. Admittedly, sometimes witches did magic because they felt like it.
Yeah.
They wanted to curse somebody who was being a jackass, or they wanted to make somebody fall in love with them, or they wanted to do many things. But I'm hoping that many of the people who joined us today have an opinion to throw in onto this. Is that Lauren there? See your hand up. You're down as iPhone.
Yeah, I'm on my phone. I'm sorry. I will be back
Okay.
when I can get my computer up again.
Okay. All right. We'll just call you
Sympathy.
just call you iPhone.
You're here now.
Hi. I have done rune readings for a cookie, for the free cookie they give at the hotel where the conference is, because that's all the woman had. She was one of the housekeepers and she had a couple of the cookies and she needed reading, and somebody said, well, go talk to Laurel. And I was very touched by that. I think it was also because I have enough left over from my 40-year-old 2 Spanish classes, but we managed it. And I did her reading for a cookie. I wouldn't even take both cookies. I took one cookie. I've also done a reading where I told the person my rates were $15 to $50 sliding scale, and the person gave me $120. And I, are you sure? And she said, yes. And she said, I'm a professional psychic. And if I had spent as much time with a client as you just did, I would have asked the client for $140. So that's what I'm paying you. And I said, well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm very grateful. But it's not about the money. It's about the exchange of energy for me. I'm not telling anybody else what to do, which is probably a shock to some of you. If you know me, I'm so bossy. But I'm bossy, McBossy. But seriously, for me, it is that there has been an exchange of energy. It's
Mhm.
also vital to my ability to read the person. They have to open up enough to let me read them, which means that even that small little gift is an exchange of energy where I can start my rune reading. Now, the runes are smarter than I've ever been in my life, smarter than I ever will be in my life. But there's part of me involved in it too, because I look at the runes and I let them inspire me, and I let that inspiration come from the runes through me, but also colored by the energy exchange with that person. Did that
Mhm.
make sense?
Oh, yeah. And the
Mhm.
idea
Made
that that
perfect sense.
person that gave you $120 and was comfortable with the fact that she was comfortable with it and felt that you were worth it
Well, I
made
was
it
touched.
that's a balanced exchange, value for value. And likewise with the cookie,
Yeah,
same thing.
Yeah.
Balance is,
give
you
what
know,
you have.
The least I've ever been paid was 13 small rocks back before Kathy made me the cloth with the pockets for my cards.
Wow.
Nice.
Well, little kid wanted a reading and it was a windy day, so I showed them the one rock I had and I said, if you can bring me 12 more rocks this size, I will give you a reading.
Mhm.
10 minutes later, they showed
Okay.
up.
You determined a
Wow.
value that was
That
agreeable to
works.
both of you, and
Exactly.
There you go. Boy, that's the most interesting haggling story I've ever heard.
It kept my cards from blowing away. Kept
Yeah,
me from
really.
having to get
Good.
up and go
Chase them.
hunt for the rocks myself. That's one of the reasons Kathy made the cloth. That it basically it fits my, for those of you who haven't seen it, it fits my table like a shower cap, and it has
Ah,
pockets in it that I can place my cards into.
oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
This also
cool.
Acknowledge that the rune stones are kind of cheating on a windy day. I will acknowledge that.
Eh, no,
No,
I use rune bones that I made. So
I like bones.
yeah,
It reminds me of and we're going to shift one step sideways. Another group that talks about can you take money is the Reiki community.
Yeah.
A lot of Reiki people, well, they're at least back in the 80s, you paid for your training. You were supposed to do the healings for free. But I was teaching Runewalder, which is kind of like Reiki with runes,
Mhm.
and at Penzic, because I think the more healing modalities we have out there, the better off we're all going to be. And one of the people came afterwards and he said, now how much is that? And he said, I'm not comfortable. I am a doctor and I go to training sessions of all sorts. And I think this is going to be very valuable to me. And he insisted on giving me $50 because he didn't feel
Yeah.
comfortable accepting the training without paying what he was used to spending.
Mm.
So a very, very similar people.
Yeah.
I think a lot of why Usui said that you had to give something was because he had so many people who came back with the same ailment.
Absolutely. Yes.
And he believed, or the people who told me about him
Yeah.
that he believed that you couldn't accept a healing emotionally unless you had given something. Now, I'm a great proponent of pay it forward. If you say, if you can't do this, then I will say, then please do a good turn for somebody else in the future. Recording that works for me. But at the same time, I see absolutely no reason. I don't know how many of you done professional reading, but if you have sat in your booth and one fair, somebody brought me a lemonade, all of the ice melted. I didn't take a sip from it from noon till 6 when the fair closed. You do deserve to get paid for the effort you put in, the time,
Mhm.
the skill.
Yes.
And that was something that was pounded into me by one of my first teachers. Herman was very big on, especially for readings, you are using skills, you get paid for it.
Yes. You're also using your own energy.
Right.
Yeah.
There
Yeah,
have been times we've had to not do that. I'm thinking specifically one Vermont Ren Fair when we ended up in Greenfield, Massachusetts, and they dug up one of those arcane laws about readings and said, nope, you can't do it for pay. And we're going to have a policeman on site to make sure you don't take tips or donations either.
Hmm.
How can they say no tips or donations?
Because they decided any kind of cash was payment. Even so, basically, Kathy specifically got paid in lots and lots of lemonade and a couple of pieces of jewelry, and I did the same. Every now and again, somebody would barter something from me, and So I must admit, we also did considerably shorter readings than we normally do when you've got the sign saying free.
Yeah. Robin's got her hand up.
her hand's been up all night.
Robin?
Mhm.
Can you invite Aldo? He can't get in.
Who? Oh,
Aldo, I messaged you about it. He's not able to get in. The numbers are wrong.
I am not at my computer. I don't have a way of inviting him. Ooh, let me think. How about
Okay, I'm listed as a co-host, but I don't know how to do the invite.
well, you go to you go to participants, and then you can go invite. They have a thing that says invite, and then you're supposed to give them the email, and I don't know his email, and I'm not going to ask you guys to put it up here public.
Right.
That seems wrong.
Yeah, because I can call up the invites, but
It's about the
Yeah.
only way to get it to him is email.
I'm so
Yeah,
frustrated.
because he says the link numbers are wrong, or the entry numbers are wrong, or something like that.
are they?
Well, that's interesting because
Is he on Yahoo or Gmail?
I don't know.
Okay,
Well,
sorry.
I used the link that was in the body of
The Facebook.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
Facebook
announcement.
same as I did.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what
what
I
I
did
did.
too, but he keeps getting errors. He's
Okay,
trying
I'm going
twice
to
and he keeps
I'm going to
getting
go down to my other computer. Keep going, keep talking. I will go and see if I can invite
Okay.
Aldo in.
Zoom has updated many things recently. If he's not an updated client for Zoom,
That
it's possible
could be.
he's not
He's also in
compatible.
Brazil too, but it's a little bit
Oh.
different there than it is here. Let me see
Oh.
how.
Yeah, there have been recent updates, so he might not be compatible at the moment.
yeah, because I was
Yeah.
about to say they roll out updates automatically, but that's US for sure, and I don't know about outside US.
Currently, when
And-
you do correctly connect, you get a screen that is unfamiliar from before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And
very.
One of the
So-
reasons I am willing to charge for moon readings
Mhm.
is because of Zoom, actually.
oh,
I have to pay for a Zoom account.
there you
Oh,
go.
yeah.
And if I don't make that money back, I've lost money in the year.
Mhm.
So, I mean, so that's one of the reasons I am willing to charge for readings, especially the ones I do at a distance, because I use Zoom and Zoom costs money.
Mhm.
And in
Yeah,
the
and
case of
Pardon me
Kathy
for
and
interrupting.
myself, it's because we've had to pay for table space. People don't just say, "Oh, I can, yeah, you can come in and do readings. I won't charge you anything," because people who run fairs, they've got to pay their rent.
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I said
Unfortunately, we are not in the Iron Age where you can pay me in 5 loaves of bread and a chicken.
Right.
right.
Although
Maybe-
eggs would be pretty
Well, in the
valuable.
right in the right part of US.
Next
you can
last
do
one,
that, but,
particularly,
And I am an amber tramp, I confess. I'll go get a necklace on so you know that I'm not naked. But yeah, you can pay me in amber. I'll take it.
yeah, oh, yeah,
Hey,
there
that-
you go. That's-
You're talking high-end trade goods then.
I was about to say, good.
We could show you a piece or two.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
So,
When
yeah, the
I,
idea of the even exchange Because if I'm putting out cash and not getting something roughly equivalent. Now, if you give me a chicken, I would have had to pay for the chicken at the grocery store. And, so that sort of works. But I know I look at like the utility company and my landlord and all of that, and they only take the greenbacks.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's because when you deal with so many unrelated people, there has to be a universal medium of exchange.
And the green frog skins make a very good medium of exchange.
Yep.
Mhm.
So the question is, how do you fit that into your practice without falling into the pit that most of society has fallen into, where money has become the only measure of value for them? It's all about money. And the more you have, the better you are. And they
Is
don't,
that the pit we're falling into?
well, the pit we could fall into. And the point is, I think one of the things that sets us apart from everybody else is that we recognize that money has very real measurable value, but we also value many other things.
I think part of what keeps us out is the fact that people who have that money is the only reason I do this attitude very quickly find themselves with no clients because they tend to give
Yeah.
pretty crappy readings.
Yeah, exactly.
I've
And
run into, and I must
Yeah.
admit, once or twice run out of a fair, people with just that attitude.
the bigger problem, I think, is that how do we help people perceive the value in what we're offering for that money
That's the thing.
and not see it as fraudulent and not see it as a
Right.
scam? And
as much as I hate the word, correctly monetizing our value,
Mm.
so that the client, you'll say, well, that'll be $25, and the client says, all right, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
And we have to be, in that sense, we have to be able to convey. And now it's sometimes only after a reading, when you, especially one where you've discovered something amazing, and the client's just sitting there with their eyes wide open
Mhm.
Yeah.
and practically
Well, that's where they
do.
can always give a bigger tip if they
Yeah.
want.
Right.
Yeah, I've had clients literally. I try to get the money in advance, mostly because I can often be sufficiently spaced after doing an intense reading that I would forget.
Ah,
So I've had them sometimes, okay, I take the money and later I'm done and they're going into their wallet. I said, you've already paid me. And it's like, no, you need more. I
right.
do not,
You've earned more.
right.
There is a particular, in our heathen community, very sadly, there's a Sethkona whom I have known for many years. And very sadly, I have a great many differences with this particular Sethkona.
Mm.
And I sometimes question this person's choices. But she has publicly called me down for taking readings at a lower amount. And she says, my readings start at $40. And the beauty of the runes is she understands the runes, so she can give a reasonable reading because she can give what the rune poems say or what the runes mean. But I find it very troubling because, again, I feel that she is monetizing what we often think of as a ministerial duty, if I'm allowed those words. And
Yeah.
I
It's
think
part of
there
the
are
life
ways to
woman.
get compensation for the effort, but I'm not always sure that monetization is the appropriate road, and certainly it is not the be all and end all.
Oh, no, absolutely not. And monetizing, in the way I see it, is something, it's like one side of the value equation.
Mhm.
There's that medium of exchange, and then there are so many other things. And back to why I would never, well, I'd have a sense of how much compensation, but I really wouldn't know that until I was done with a counseling session. And I would then know how long it took. I would know from the client how well I had done, because if I, because I would say, well, did that help? Did it help you resolve this, that, and the other thing? And at that point, then we can both start thinking about what that's worth. And is it going to be cash, or is it going to be something else? Is it going to be a strand of gems? Is it going to be some, or, maybe that other person is a practitioner in another area. And I say, well, I'll swap you this counseling session for a reading.
Yeah. I've sometimes swapped reading for reading at fairs where there are other readers. It's literally, I'll give you one, you give me one.
Right.
Working on the idea that like doctors that treat themselves have a fool for a patient.
Right.
Readers that, my opinion is, if I give a reading for myself, I've got a fool for a client.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're paraphrasing Lincoln there.
Yeah.
Who, anyone who represents himself in court has a fool for a client.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a lot to be said for the notion that I don't know how much you can do a reading on yourself, because it's like asking a fish what water's like.
Yeah.
You're immersed in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many things you can't see. There are so many things I depend on Jen to see, and that she depends on me
I
to
must
see.
admit, I have some massive blind spots when it comes to myself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's another aspect of it. It's one thing when you're, let's say, at a fair and you have a table set up and you're doing readings, but what happens if someone that comes to you and says, hey, can you do a reading? Do you charge? Do you charge the full rate? Do you charge a discount rate? Do you not charge?
A lot will depend on the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if it's somebody who is going through a heavy duty, say there's a dying relative, or they're going through a divorce or something like that, I will probably do a reading for free, based on the idea of they're getting the family rate.
Yeah, very much.
But if it's just they want a reading and they don't want to come to a fair, then they're going to end up paying the standard, either $20 or $25, depending on where we are.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Allow me
yeah.
to throw in one thing I traditionally do is I say, this is a donation, and I won't take your money unless you're satisfied.
Right.
So I don't take the money up front, I take it afterwards.
Well,
And-
as I
and
explained,
I
I'm often
often
so
get- I
spacey
often
by
get
the end,
tips.
I have no choice.
But
Yeah, because
I will tell you, the people who say, no, I'm not going to give you anything, I frequently see them up to a year later and they say, everything you said came true. And I said, oh, good, then you can pay me now. And then they laugh
Mm-hmm.
because they feel
Make me,
that
yeah.
if they're that kind of person, there is an attitude that some subcultures have that says you must, if you have an opportunity to get something for free, you must take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is something that it is quite closely associated with the poverty mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But I also see it,
Yeah.
say what we nastily refer to as Karens.
yeah,
You have to be
that-
smart to get ahead, and paying for something that you could get
That
for
we
free is
we
being a
must
sucker.
teach our children to demand, after all of these years of feminism trying to teach women that they deserve respect, they teach their children that they want obsequiousness from
Yeah.
lesser beings like maids.
Well, the advantage of most pagan gatherings is we don't get those Karens, and at most Ren fairs, one, I'm usually wearing a rather large knife,
Mhm.
and two, I go out of my way to make friends with security.
yeah.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
know,
There
it-
is-
it-
And let's face it, we're psychic. We
Mhm.
can usually see them coming.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've
you know,
only
it's a-
had one really unsatisfied customer since 2001, and that was at one of the Rhode Island Pagan Prides when you and I were at Chippecon,
Mhm.
where the woman was basically, it's the standard, is he going to leave his wife for me reading?
Oh, that one.
You can
Oh,
see them coming a mile away, because usually they're going down the line of readers.
there are some categories of readings that
Yeah.
And
never going to
the
go well.
problem was, this wasn't quite that bad. It's just she didn't want a man that wasn't dark-haired and dark-eyed.
Mm.
But, you
Jeez.
know, I saw a blonde turn up in her life. I saw a redhead turn up in her life. No. He had to look Hispanic.
Oh God, where are you? Oh, I kept sending you a boat and a.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
No.
It was, so
Yeah.
I basically just handed her money back and sent her off to somebody who would, a little less ethical, who would say, yes, he's coming into your life. Well, he might, but with that attitude, I doubt if he's going to stick around.
Right.
Hmm.
I actually wouldn't want to have their money because that would be an energy exchange that I didn't want to participate in.
Well,
Mm.
Yeah.
I simply said, if you're not satisfied, and I pulled out the 20 and gave it back to her.
There you go.
I do,
Yeah.
I do something at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair that I've been mocked at when doing readings. I don't ask anybody what their question is.
Neither do I.
Because, you know, we got hundreds of people. We got hundreds of people there, and we got to, you know, get as many people in the chair as possible to entertain them. But I tell them that I'm just interpreting the cards like it's a newspaper in a language that they can't understand.
Mhm.
And if the information makes sense to them, then that's what's important, and it's none of my business what's going on in their life, unless they wish to tell me.
If somebody is here, I always ask them, do they have a specific question or do they want a general reading? And if they say specific question, I tell them, don't tell me about it. My simple answer is, I've been reading cards for 51 years. If I know your question, I can unconsciously influence the cards to tell you what you want to see.
Right.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
basically work on the idea if it keeps me honest.
Yeah.
And we end up figuring out what the question was anyway later on anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or when I'm done, then I have them tell me the question.
Right.
And how
If they're
often would
looking
they
at-
have asked,
Exactly.
how often would they have asked the wrong question too?
Sometimes the cards spend a lot of time telling them not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear.
Yep.
Yeah.
Truth.
And it's the same with the runes.
Yep.
No, it's the same with the kind of counseling I do, which is typically death counseling. And it's, yeah, you got to tell them what they need to hear, know what they want to hear. And that can be very difficult.
Exactly. I had one where I was doing a rune reading for a lady from Ghana. Her father had died, and she kept giving this premonition that he had gone to hell. And what is the first rune that comes up? Ear. A rune I associate with Hela. He'd gone to
Mhm.
hell, but he just hadn't gone to the one with 2 L's.
Mhm.
I'm not
Mhm.
sure how he ended up, how a Ghanaian, he was apparently one of the traditional religions there, ended up in Helheim. Somebody was asleep at the divine switch that morning.
Or got him to the right place.
Yeah,
Right.
it may be where he needed to go. But
The
it's like, yeah,
importance, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
go.
the importance of doing a reading without hearing those words from the querent is that it lets the runes start the process, at least for me, so that the
Exactly.
runes, it's me trusting the runes to know what they're doing. And I have yet to find them not know what they're doing. And then I'll say, this is what I see generally. Now tell me your question.
Yeah.
And then usually I said, oh, well, then that is this, and this is this, and this is this. And she said, yes, exactly. you're right, or he says, and is there something else? And depending on where the question is, I'll put another rune under the specific rune. But yeah, the blind question is for me the most useful tool, because the runes know what they're doing. I don't need to know what they're
Exactly.
doing, at least to start with.
And sometimes they can be clear, sometimes they can be cryptic, and sometimes they can be a brick through a plate glass window.
Oh, I'm going to mention that while I was at the other computer, I put up the link to the Strange Pennsylvania laws in the chat.
Yeah, I
saw that.
see that there.
If when you probably, it's very fun. It includes things like dueling as well as
Well,
fortune telling. But if you want to have that someplace else, you go to the chat, and then there's three buttons down at the bottom, three dots down at the bottom. You can save the chat, and then you'll have that and all the other words of wisdom that we have in the chat. But I wanted to mention that. So we have essentially pretty much agreed. We don't have anybody disagreeing. Come on, somebody disagree. Somebody got a twist
think
on these, that it's
Didn't
okay to charge.
didn't I say that earlier, that we might just end up all agreeing with each other?
Oh, well. And
There
Sorry
is a
about that.
context where I disagree about charging.
Okay.
When my husband and I, when we were in California, we ran a coven. It was a very powerful and spiritual experience to train up a group of witches, and that's what we did. And when we were in charge of the coven, if one of our coveners asked for guidance or help, you bet your bippy I did not charge a penny, because
Right,
I was
makes
their
sense.
priestess, and that was my job
Well,
and
it's your
not
spiritual
my
duty.
income.
Right.
Well, I think
That's-
we're
But if
generally
that
still
same
in
person had
agreement.
come to you at the Renaissance Pleasure Fair and asked for a reading, you would have charged, correct?
If I charge strangers, yes.
Mhm.
And some people I know, because I know them, I will say, this is my rate, 15 to 50. Pay what you like. It's a sliding scale.
You were giving your coveners the family rate, which is, I said, at least with me, is
But
nothing.
when when I'm priestessing a ritual and someone needs something afterwards, if I am being the priestess, the witch on duty, shall we say, then no, I will not charge. There was a Samhain ritual quite some years ago where the young woman said, "This happened to me. What can you do?" And I said, "Well, I'll do a reading for her." And she says, "I don't have any money with me." And I said, "So," and I did the reading, and we talked about it, and we talked her through it. But again, it's when it is a contextual thing. I am not saying, here are my prices. When I go to Between the Worlds later in this year, I think it's Easter weekend. If someone wants a reading there, I'll go visit the reading room, and yes, I will charge money.
Mhm.
But that's
But-
different.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
like,
And I think where we disagree is we all have a different list of when to charge and when not to charge. It's largely contextual, but we all have a different context.
Mhm.
And
I don't think they're that different always, though.
no, they're not all
Yeah.
that different. They are the same kind of differences. We have a policy of not charging people who, for one reason or another, are either spiritually connected to us or are indigent and need a reading and can't pay for it.
Yeah,
And I think that we share that enough. We're just going to have to suck it up and realize that we agree.
mhm.
Yeah. Now, Angela said something in chat.
Yeah. You've got 13 people with a heavy-duty subject, and we all seem to be in basic agreement.
Yeah. Angela said
Did
something
I just hear
interesting
the
in
Galler horn
chat.
blow?
So I have a couple things.
Hmm.
The first one is I would never ask that I know who makes their living by reading or teaching to give me a cut rate, no matter what our relationship is. I'm an
Thank you.
initiate of a tradition,
Thank you.
and if my initiator reads for me, right, I pay him what his going rate is. So that's a slight difference. Where I think
Okay.
we may have more differences is on charging or not charging for teaching. And not just for teaching in a conference way or a class given at a local store, but teaching toward initiation. There's a huge amount of difference in different traditions on teaching toward initiation. I think that's where we'll find our differences.
Hmm.
Some of the witches, oh, sorry.
No, that was it. I believe, I can see that.
Some of the witches I live in the Delmarva area, and some of the witches in this area I have strong differences with possibly because I came from California, from the San Francisco Bay Area, possibly because I hung out with people like Paul Edwin Zimmer and Dinah Paxson and Dawn Frew and these book mages. Not only were they powerful witches, powerful priestesses and priests, they were big on reading. And some of the folks around here aren't. The place I found that is the safest for us as, history and folklore nerds has, of all things, been the reclaiming community. Reclaiming charges for classes, for initiation, for training, and they make no bones about it. And that's been a real adjustment for me, although not for the classes so much as for the other things. Victor Anderson, when I worked with him for about a year and a half, didn't charge for initiation, but he certainly accepted gifts and payment for his time as was appropriate. And so have done several of his students whom I've known over the years in the fairy tradition. So I don't know if that's where it comes from or not.
I'm an Anderson Fairy initiate, and there is a huge schism in Anderson Fairy between those that charge and those that don't.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons I brought it up.
Well, thank you so much.
My initiator is public. He charges for teaching. If you get to a point where he accepts you as someone he wants to train for initiation, his charges stop. There are other people that don't charge for any teachings. And then there's another side of fairy where they probably charge all the way. It's such a diverse group of people in Anderson Fairy. I came in through reclaiming, by the way. It's like I'm in Northern California, so you and I probably know.
Yes, exactly.
Same people.
In my younger days, I sang in the Spiral Dance Chorus. I knew your name. I recognized you.
Then you'd know Beth, one of my teachers.
Yeah.
Bone Blossom.
Yeah. It was really good working with Victor, though, because he was very clear about what my rules are studying with him. So I'm grateful to him for that, rest his soul.
I wish I had been able to meet him.
Talk about these schisms. I suddenly flash back to a report I read, it's been a while now, looking at the fundamental cause for divorces. 45% were due to arguments over money.
Yeah.
And that was a cautionary tale right there, that money is important. Well, it's to really mangle and paraphrase Benjamin Franklin, a wonderful servant, but a terrible master.
Mhm.
Oh, Angela's got another wonderful point here.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Oh,
Yes,
Our
Angela.
culture really does allocate status by income.
mhm. Yeah,
And and a lot of times charging more gives people more more
they,
oh,
they,
I just remembered in placebos, a pill is not as powerful as a shot, which is not that
mm,
there's basically a ranked system which makes placebos more powerful depending on what the perception of the patient is. This is serious medicine. And doctors use that. And I think to a certain extent we might.
Mm.
If
Yeah.
you charge more, then obviously you're worth more.
well, a couple of months ago, we had, I forget her name, and I hate that I forget her name, a woman who was talking about how to become a professional psychic. And
Corby.
yes, we did. And she was talking about perceived value of the goods you offer, and it included charging a price
Yeah,
at a certain point. People need to see that you value your services, and then they will, as long as the visual impression and the overall sense of what you're doing supports that price that you charge, they will have a better opinion of what you do.
This happens in all parts of life.
Oh yeah.
Sadly, in the SCA,
Mhm.
a child in a fancier outfit is perceived to be better behaved.
Mhm. No matter what.
Yeah.
So that's why some people will put on a gypsy outfit to tell fortunes, even though they normally dress like everybody's
Right.
may not, but and yet we have to be careful about. I made myself uncomfortable by using the word gypsy
Yes. I
because
yeah.
because
Yeah.
we have to be careful about accepting the slurs that have been passed on to us by our recent forebears.
Mm.
We have to extricate ourselves from that.
Especially when they're not slurs. I need to go, kind friends. You're all so wise and wonderful, and thank you so kindly for your wisdom.
And thank you
Glad
for
you're
coming.
here.
Oh, well,
Good
thank you
night.
for being here. Yes.
See you in the whenever.
Yep.
See you whoever.
Bye.
Yep. And yeah, we have to do that. But anyway, so we are now entering our last 5 minutes. Anybody who had anything that they wanted to share, please do.
Angela, did you have anything else? You had a lot of good comments in the chat.
Yeah, really.
Angela's a great chat contributor.
I can never get in to talk because y'all are so awesome. So I just fill in the chat. But no, I do shoe shining on the side, and Henry and I both do crafting. I do readings, but I don't do readings for cost. I do them for myself and friends and family.
Mhm.
But it's the same situation that you're paying for your craft, you're paying for your time and your effort. Even supplies at some point, tarot cards aren't free, especially if you create your own divination deck or you make your own room, you get your own, stones and whatever other forms of divination that you do. It's still time and effort and energy, and it's exhausting, and you're putting literally everything, blood, sweat, and tears into doing this. It's not just, I'm going to flip a card and say, oh, look, Tall, Dark, and Handsome is going to show up. You're actually paying attention to the details of your art. It's not just something frivolous. So people need to realize that this is something at least serious to the person who is reading, whether they believe magic is real or not.
Mhm.
You're doing this for a service for someone, and just like you would pay an artist, or you would pay a server or a dancer, or anything like that, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it
It
is.
definitely is. And I think we have to acknowledge that at some level, we have to train as hard as any professional.
Mhm.
You know, we don't go to the Magic University, but we probably, it
Some of
takes
us do, but
takes
some of them out there do.
4,000 hours of classroom and clinical experience to get a basic doctor's license. And that's just to get you in at the grunt level of doctor. Well, 4,000 hours in different modes is a lot of work.
Hmm.
And it's something we have to because we need to have confidence. And I think that's been said either by Angela in chat or somebody out loud here, that the value of our services will be perceived to some degree by the confidence we display in it.
Hmm.
And if you go to someone who is open, confident, seems to know what they're doing, you will feel more confident. The doctor allegory works too, is you walk in and the doctor's read every line in your chart and asks good questions and listens carefully when you talk. You ought to come in as a reader with that same level of confidence, that same level of training,
Hmm.
and present yourself just like that.
I don't want to turn off the recording though without pointing out another bit of wisdom from Angela, which was that many of us are working with deities and guides and other things who have very strict rules that they give us about whether we can charge or not.
Yes.
And that's not in our control.
No,
Because a lot of these invisible beings who are helping us
That was
are
Robin, actually.
not
as
averse
well.
to giving us a cosmic clue by 4 upside the head if we don't go along with what they want.
Mhm.
Yep.
So,
Robin was emphasizing that point as well.
well, actually, she was the one that initially. Well,
No, I think Angela initially said it, but
no, well,
Robin
it was a
agreed,
direct.
yes.
It was a direct question to Robin,
okay.
and that was her answer.
well, this is a really great conversation. There are other things that, other aspects of money which become difficult. I remember a great deal of, shall we come back and revisit, should we be paid for our spiritual?
Mm.
Yes, I think that would be an excellent idea.
Because
Yeah.
I remember hearing about a lot of people jumping on elders who accepted the gift of helping you carry things up and down, delivering groceries, cleaning the house, in exchange for teaching palmistry, rune reading, etc. And they said, "Oh, that is just so horrible. You're taking advantage of these poor." I was like, how else are college and high school students who usually have no money?
Exactly. And how
Right.
else are elders who may not be able to function as well as they used to get things done?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Would love
absolutely.
to trade a year's apprenticeship for a year's worth of dishwashing.
yeah.
Right.
I think it's a great thing. I will look at scheduling something like that about a month
Yeah.
out.
Mhm.
Sounds
Because
like a
that
plan.
was good.
Tonight's topic
next week,
also.
Hmm?
Go ahead.
I was just
Yeah,
going to say, next week we got Arkenstone, who is
Yes.
going to address another difficult problem, tribalism, the positive points he wants to bring out.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah, we've
so
seen
easy
enough
to
of the
look when
negative.
something is being done badly. It's easy to look at the bad parts. So it should be a really good show next week.
Okay.
Any last things before we turn off the recording?
Just one thing. Chipicon, you may need to send me the host key number so that if you get locked out again and say Feather Stitch is not available, I can start things up.
Good idea. I will do that.
You know,
I
can
also,
email it to me.
Well, I don't have the host key number either, so
Yeah, so that way I
Yeah.
can hopefully start the bloody thing.
yeah.
I hate to say it, but I went to the post key first
Yeah,
and they wouldn't let me in.
Oh, you go vote.
yeah, we actually, yeah,
That happened last week. We don't
Yeah.
need to record this though.
yeah.
So thank you all. Remember to tell your friends who missed it that they can look and see the recording later. So,
Okay.
Bye-bye. See
but
y'all on the flip side.
Bye.
Night Star Roll.
yeah, and
And there we are.